Place beyond this cave. Our shade has some interesting thoughts. If he was never told about this place that exists beyond the caves, or never told to stay just within the caves, would he have known? So, looking at some other things that the developer had said about the game, the lone guardian is patrolling the empty streets. I like how he just has this fun imagination. The developer says they intended for players to play in one of three different ways. The first way is to do nothing. To just be able to spend 400 days doing absolutely nothing and being able to satisfy that requirement of the game and reach an ending. In some way, it's sort of the stress relief, where you don't have to do anything. I am truly alone. Well, the king is there, he's just asleep. And you have your spider bro friend. Treasure! If you recall, back when we were looking at the world map, we saw this room, or you may have noticed it. We can, in fact, use our Matic. This is a lot of treasure behind some sort of protective barrier. Kind of see the little glazed shininess across it. So in order to reach the treasure, we would have to break in. We don't currently have a need for a treasure, so we're just going to enjoy it for what it is. But we're going to pick this up. A piece of chalk. Now I'll be able to paint the pale moon that will remain forever enshrouded. So the idea of stress relief. You know, most games, actually to a point, some games will stressfully tell you, hey, you've got this great open world. Hurry, you must go do whatever the objective is, to go rescue someone, to go invade someone. There's always some sort of NPC that gets you in this mentality of go fast. You must hurry, you must do this thing, almost immediately from starting the game, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being an open world, you know? So for this game to say, they just want that stress relief, where you can do absolutely nothing, still reach an ending after 400 days, but that is one of the intended endings. The second ending would be to, or not ending rather, taking a stroll in these magnificent halls sure is a fulfilling occupation. The second way, intended way of playing the game. Ooh, that one's a real coal. Let's go get it before it's gone. Where does the coal fall to? I don't pick it up. I do like how you can kind of see the image of something behind these sort of ruby panes. Right, the second intended way of playing the game is to improve your house, your home. And by improving it, adding decorations, I should talk to myself more often. The Shade would be a good streamer. Right. By improving your home, by adding decorations, by mining crystals, building a bed perhaps, reading books, you cause time to move faster. And that's the second intended way of playing the game, that in order to make time go faster, you'll have to invest time in exploring the caves, specifically the caves in those areas, and finding things that'll make your time more enjoyable here. Door. This door should lead to the library, but it's blocked from the other side. I will add this event to my list of disappointments, and I'll have 8 disappointments. I believe there were 12 disappointments in all. I'll have to make a checklist. However, you can only have 9 within your, I guess, internal inventory. So after we've reached 9 disappointments, you won't really recall or hold on to any more than that. This shiny little glimmer of red. A piece of clay. Now I have some red color for my paintings. And with the lapis and the sulfur and the 2 we just got, that makes 5 colors. So with our 5 colors, we can decorate. Loneliness is real. Aha. Searching those dead ends, it pays off. This is, however, the other side of a place we were walking yesterday. I'm gonna walk over there just to give you a look. Yeah. And that's where we just began. I do like that the caves are somewhat of a maze. Rather, they begin as a maze, and it's something extrinsic to the game, where just from your time playing the game, you begin to learn the layout of the map. The twisting caves are not so twisting anymore. I've always wondered, above that doorway, it looks like another path, like a stairway, like the one we just come from. I've always wondered if we could get up there. I still wonder that because I have not found a way. Moss. There is moss growing here, but it's not ready to be harvested yet. We're going to see that icon quite often. Splish splash. The shade himself likes these little sounds that are just unusual and interesting. You might think, it's been 4 days. Shouldn't there... Rather, it's been more than 4 days. It's been a long time since the king has done things. Shouldn't there be a lot of moss growing? Well, let's get philosophical for a moment. That saying, if a tree falls in the woods, would it make a sound? According to the game, the water is not deep enough to drown myself in. Little shade. According to the game, time did not exist in these places until we have traveled here. So everything was at a complete stasis until we arrive. The door, the spider, granted we pushed something there to put things in motion, but a moss that we hope would grow to reach those caverns that we visited yesterday. This moss, this entire cave that could be filled with moss, hasn't even begun to grow. took us arriving here to set things in motion, to, I guess, carry with us this essence of time beginning to pass. Perhaps this concept of time didn't exist until the king created us and gave us the task to wait 400 days. Because before that moment, time didn't move at all. It's innocent in some way, to ask that question. What is time? How long is a day? I find it interesting that the shade mentioned that it's not deep enough to drown myself in. To have this thought of perhaps wanting to end himself, to end his longing. It's kind of dark, but as the shade mentioned, loneliness is real. It's a very tangible thing. And sometimes you'll go to great lengths to get rid of that loneliness. This little droplet is doing a lot of hard work. Is it? What a failure. I think I could make it if I wait for the friendly droplet to fill up the pit. This might take a month. So now we have one objective that would take a week, which is the spider web. Perhaps the moss to grow at the end of a pit, bottom of a pit. Well, the end of it, right? That would take 2 weeks. And here we now have a pool of water that we're going to wait a month for. Oh, and the stalactite. That's going to take... actually, let me rephrase what I said. The spider was an undetermined time. The stalactite was 1 week. This pit was 2, and now we have a month for this. Splish splash. So there are a couple of possibilities, things we could do. All right, the third intended way of playing the game. Just to recap, the first being do nothing. The second being to explore, and through exploring, decorate your home to make time move faster. I saw pick up there. Let's pick up a coal. And the third, to go against what the king tells us, to never go beyond the caves, which is what we had been doing these past few days. We were just going up and up. To me, I never thought of them as distinct ways of playing. They all blend together in some way. when you stop playing the game to have a break, to sleep. I have never understood life. I think the question, Little Shade, is, are you supposed to understand it? Or are you supposed to ask 8 questions? Oh, cool. I'm thinking about going back towards the house. The cave here is warm and beautiful. I do like it here. I like this room. Also because you can walk around the background of that room. But there we've gone around in another loop. But yeah, the first couple of days we've played, we've sort of done the third intended way of playing the game, which is to, I guess, leave the caves. And then we took a long break, watching a door for a couple of hours, in some way that's not doing anything. And now that we have all this chalk, why not go back, decorate our home? To me, they all feel like something that you are doing. I don't think of them as specifically one being an ending over another. Or rather, I don't think of any of them being exclusive. I'm looking for something in these caves. I'm just not sure what. Yes, we do. We're looking for a musical instrument. We're looking for... Oh, we found all of our chalk. I'm kind of just showing off how these doors connect to each other. There is another place at the very bottom that we didn't go to, and we're going to come back and explore that another time. In some ways, I don't want to see all the map. Not right away. I like that little feeling of adventure, of walking someplace we've never seen before. Hello, trusty map. Farewell, map. We'll go back, look at it again sometime, after we're more familiar with all the locations. I should go there. Well, let's go to this one. We entered this room once before, but I decided better of it and that we would come back another time. Well, now is that time. A sheet of paper. It'll be useful for my art studies. I wonder, where did it come from? It seems that I hope the king doesn't mind if I borrow one of his books. Even though some places were kind of in a standstill of time, there's still evidence that time did flow here. But it's a cool looking little music room. Having a kingdom, I suppose it makes sense to have a place where music happens. I like to think that we don't actually hear music, but it's sort of the vibe of each place that we go to. The sheet of paper will be useful for my art studies. Yeah. It's just kind of the look of the place, the way it feels, some sort of connection to perhaps what it was in the past. When we were in the caves, there was absolutely nothing. There was no inspiration there. But as we started to move higher up towards the surface, there was just this very faint, distant sound, a little bit of music, kind of calling to us, wanting us to just explore further. So these crystals, we can take them, and we can decorate our home with them. I think I'll do that another time. Because we're going to walk through this place quite often. And it starts to look a bit messy. Oh, my favorite part. I like this ground. But the Shade is a very imaginative character. And so I think of the music as just an extension of his imagination. Like, this is the cool, long, grand stairway leading to the king. You can just hear it. top of his head does resemble a crown somewhat, but he also looks bound to it. That he's connected to the ground itself. The king is lonely, right? Isn't that perhaps why he made us? And there's our little crystal. Let's put it in the fireplace. It's not gonna hurt it. We can't quite make music yet. I think I know where the last one is. Drawing. Oh yes. Now we have all of the colors. So I can turn off black, then I'll turn on white. Myself. Again, just a blob. The friend, the father, the soul, the hand, those are the same. The eye, the moon, the louse, all the same as if we were to draw in black, except for the crystal. Crystal is unique to white. If we look at black, it was cave. Let's look at red. Myself, friend, father, soul, hand, eye, moon, louse, tear. So the black, he represents that as a cave. The white, a crystal, something shining. Red, not as blood, but a tear. Something, I guess, perhaps just as painful. Myself, friend, father, soul, hand, eye, moon, louse, and sun. Yellow sun. He knows the sun is yellow. Why does he know this? It could have been treasure, could have been gold. Father, friend, myself, soul, hand, eye, moon, louse, lamp. Little mushroom as a lamp. Oops, I wanted to show off this first. Okay, yeah, we'll go left to right. Combining two colors. Eternity. Still the moon, a well. It's a sort of cavernous shape with a rope going to a bucket. So it's not the top part of the well, but the bottom half of it. The well and eternity are actually locations in the game. It's interesting that we can draw them right away, even though we've not been there before. I suppose wandering around, finding them. The game doesn't unlock photos or images. It's all given to you at the beginning. I think, though, so the developer just made that decision that all the artwork is going to be available, if you've been there or not. But you could also think maybe the Shade doesn't have foreknowledge of these places. He's just drawing places that you could know exist. The webs being a ladder, a heart, yet it's upside down. It's sort of a crest, an emblem, a moon, more defined, a cliff, and an end. Shade was talking about drowning himself. Now here's the image of a dagger. there's a lot to be said with these drawings. There's about a bunch of lore, a bit of speculation as well. You know, asking that question basically, how does the shade know of it? Eternity and the well, potential locations, but it's the ones that we can't visit that makes us wonder. This eye, is it perhaps an eclipse, or is it actually an eye? Myself, the hand, the moon, the friend, the cave. It's a similar cave to just with darkness. Slightly different. More haunting, perhaps. The soul, the moon, water. He draws water as red. Why would he do that? But if we look at just red itself, he has tear, which is unique. So if a tear is one drop, many of them make water. It's really dark. The eye, the moon, the hand, myself, friend, darkness. This represents the shade. When his own eyes, they're very bright yellow. But to see only his own eyes and everything else is just darkness. It's kind of interesting, even though he's drawn the eyes, to think of when you're looking from your own eyes, you can't see them. So from that perspective, all you would see is the darkness. The soul, sun, fields. Fields are not a room that you can go to in the game. So what's given the shade this inspiration of fields? Damp. It doesn't draw water here. Damp. A lamp. Just a more detailed lamp. So the stars. So he has this idea of what a night sky is. The eye, the moon, the hand, the friend, and himself. We can look at combinations starting with white. Eye, moon, hand, myself, friend, time. A book. Why it's drawn with red? It's interesting. Well, you could think of red being the color of emotion. So getting invested into this book, you spend time. As we've shown before, by reading a book, as you turn the pages, time will advance. Only once, however. So if you've read to the end of a book, turn back to the beginning, and then turn through the pages again, time is not going to speed up. It only happens the first time you read through a book. It's kind of a neat achievement, programming-wise, to do that. A wound, a tooth. So, as far as we know, the shade doesn't need to eat. Therefore, we could assume he wouldn't have need for teeth. But he knows what teeth are, apparently. I'm just leaving these as open questions for now. I think later on, as we play more, as we gain more information, we'll start to build this picture together of what all these little pieces mean. The eye, the moon, the hand, myself, friend, the sun, the soul, the moon, pain. Pain. Not with red, but with something bright. If we look just at white, we have crystal, which is unique. If we look at just yellow, we had, well, this was the first one where we saw the sun. He's drawing the sun with other colors combined. But now we have pain. Makes you wonder, perhaps this is when he experienced pain. Maybe it was under the sun. the moon, the hand, myself, friend, stars again, soul, moon, portrait. It looks quite like our shade from the side, quite like his nose. But he doesn't refer as darkness as his portrait. It's everything else. Starting with red, the eye, the moon, the hand, myself, friend, gold. Now we'll do gold. Gold being not just yellow, but with the red as well. The red having books, time, something meaningful in some way. Gold. So perhaps the shade does understand a value of gold, that it has a meaning to it. It has some sort of deep substance behind it. Soul, moon, door. Door. The door drawn with red and gold. It's interesting. Why would he use these colors to represent that? Something, again, perhaps meaningful, valuable. We don't have a door to our room. I guess it's the thought of, what if the door is locked, like the one to that library where we earned a disappointment? In some way, it is valuable. It is like a treasure. It is gold in some way. It is meaningful, perhaps, to, or what's inside of it. The same as a book. The eye, moon, hand, myself, friend, the sea. That's an interesting choice of color combination. Not with the sky or anything. Well, he used blue before as stars. But perhaps he thinks of the sea more like how he thinks of water. Water being red here, red being tears, to water, to the sea. Granted, the sea isn't drawn with the red, but the sky is. And here, when he draws it, the opposite is the desert. We don't actually visit the sea or the desert in the caves. So where would the shade have learned of these? Good question. And the last, more stars. Friend, myself, hand, moon, eye, soul, moon, and a dream. That's fun. A dream being with gold, something with meaning. It's kind of the combination of the sun and the stars together. I guess between them both, that's where the dream is. Let's work with 3 colors. Tragedy. Huh. It's an interesting face. You could think of it like a clown. It's got an interesting nose. Very frizzy hair. An interesting smile. The eyes. We're going to come back to this one later, because there is a connection, as I mentioned before. Where do these come from? What are these inspirations for these images? There is an inspiration for this one. And we'll reveal that later. A weeping moon. Why is the moon crying? And tears, of course, are red. We had the dagger before, which is end, but now with the red, it's death. We saw a wound before, but now more detail with the red added to it. Grave. The moon reflecting off ground, the desert, Perhaps. Mutant. This has the relevance within the game. We can learn about mushrooms. He mentioned one as light. I think it was with blue. What was light? Or lamp. There it is. There's lamp. But this red one, that one's a mutant. The grave has some relevance. Whose grave, though? At night. Savior. Oh. Savior is the opposite here of tragedy. The Moon King. Interesting. Not just king, but Moon King. Duality. We have our sun and our moon. Angst. Angst. This is different than darkness. There's darkness. We add some teeth. Angst. So perhaps it's a bit of spite, something within the shade himself that's coming to the surface. It's not just him being observant, but showing something within that, an angst that comes out of that. Family. That's a fun picture. It looks quite like our shade, except it's a lighter color. Different hair. Definitely the same eyes, definitely the same nose. And treasure. More detail for the night. The full moon with curtains, however. Curtains are interesting. Dreamer. Okay, so a blue mushroom is a lantern and a dreamer. We saw dreams. Dreamer. A lake. I like this one coming from, it's seen from a cave. And we could just think of this as a creative interpretation of a location in the game. Much like the area we were just at, where there was lots of water around, we were in the caves. But it's just focusing on the lake aspect. But there are stars as well. Are we underground? Are those crystals, perhaps? This one, we could imagine it being part of the game, a place he's been to or has access to, and not something he's just recalling. House. The spider and the web. Our friend and a ladder combined is a house. Birth. And it looks much like our little shade, because in some way that's how he thinks of himself. And then we will combine below. Looks like treasure. Above. A tree. So above ground, the surface level. Below ground being caves. Crying sun. This one is different than Weeping Moon. Crying sun. But the sun and the moon both crying for some reason. Re. And an opposite, me. These are quite interesting. This one having yellow eyes, similar to our character. This one having red eyes, but also a beard. They're both having these pointed noses. So perhaps they're related in some way. Actually, if you read these backwards, that says her. This says him. But they're written backwards. Why? Why is that? There's a phrase you may have heard before. As above, so below. One being representing life and the afterlife, and there's sort of a duality there. But crossing to one side, things become reversed in some way. And so these are not people we meet in the game, but perhaps a memory, a recollection that the Shade has. And it's interesting that these words are backwards. So perhaps our little Shade had a life before who he is now. And he's recalling when he was perhaps above the world, a him and a her. There's a little bit of spoiler territory there, but that's the point. And this is what we're going to be getting into in this game. 400 days, we're going to fill it in some way. And then we have a chalice filled with pain, perhaps. I don't have any introspective things to share about the chalice. Hypnos. Care. The abyss. A journey. A cavern. A dripping moon. Again, the moon with the curtains around it, creating this weird setting. But a cavern. Place we can certainly visit. Similar to a lake, but not quite. Notice he didn't draw the lake on the other image with, it wasn't completely white. It was there. Water, he doesn't draw it with blue. He draws it with like a white. Journey is something I've always wondered about, because there's a lot of these images that we can see that put pieces together about what the game will be, places you will explore, characters you will perhaps meet or learn about, things we'll learn about, like our friend, and the web being a ladder. And this image of the bucket of the well, and care. Okay, why do we need care? It's not obvious to us currently, but there are others that we don't have a connection to. Well, any connection I'm aware of. Journey. There's a lot of images with moon and journey, and we'll see a couple more pictures coming up, but there are no boats that we can see in the game. So these images are perhaps like him and her, something that the Shade is recalling from somewhere before our longing had begun. Hypnos is an interesting one. In some ways, sort of a negative of the Shade himself. Instead of the yellow eyes, blue. Instead of having the black skin, everything is red. Not quite sure about that. But the abyss. The abyss, we've seen images of eyes. Now that we have these multicolored one, it's the abyss. This could just be the developer having a clever thought. You know, when you look into the abyss stares back at you. Right? It's just fun. It's just clever. The developer is like that. I did look at the website of the developer, at other games that they have developed, and the longing is quite unique. It seems that a lot of the other things that they have developed, mostly the one person who's responsible for making the longing, some animations, music videos and such, the longing is quite unique. It stands apart from even things that they have created themselves. But they do mention their inspiration for the longing began when they took a trip to some caves. We'll come back. We'll visit that thought another time. I'm just looking at the time. Let's show some more pictures. So, if we remember that this is not S, but perhaps to read it backwards, this is she. this is he. Instead of being in a portrait view to the side, we're looking straight at them. Let me go back to those. Her, him. She, he. A tulip. That one's an 8. Chalice. We saw chalice. He can see the chalice in 2 ways. One being filled with pain and such, and one just being pure in some way. Sort of a duality. A new sun. Rapeseed. I don't know what rapeseed is. Perhaps it's, well, we know what the field looks like, or how our character imagines a field. But now a field with rapeseed, I imagine it's some sort of seed to grow something. Maybe it's a field of tulips. I have no idea. I'm speculating there. Almost at the end. The throne. It's a representation of the couch or the chair that we can sit on. Next to it. It's hard to see, but it looks like a hourglass, and below that, a book. Above it, the moon. We could make it, no, actually it wouldn't be any bigger if we draw it. It'll be just exactly as we see it. The fall. Something tragic. If you look carefully at it, it's sort of a figure of a person stretched upside down, but just above it in red, it looks like a mirror of perhaps those feet, like a reflection. It's sort of the opposite of a shadow. A shadow would cast, a dark color. But if you drew that inverted, or inverted it like through Photoshop, the shadow would be the light part. Everything else around it would be the dark. But he titles it The Fall. I like to think of this one as if there was some moment, some life that the shade had before now, that in some way he's a shadow of himself. Titled The Fall. The poem with the horse. We'll learn more about this one later, and we'll revisit it once we do learn about that. But this is something we can learn more about in the game. The musician. This one's a bit interesting. Other than the clothing, it could be anyone, Maybe the shade thinks of that as himself in some way. Like I said, I like to think of the music in the game being part of just the shade's imagination, giving life to how he feels about those areas. But here we are looking at the abyss again, sort of a tree, but underground. That's curious. The leaf. The leaf being growth, something that exists as part of the tree. Going back to that phrase, as above, so below, where the shade draws above. Let's see, where was above? There's a tree there. And we have the image there of below. The abyss also having a tree and leaf. We saw another image where the shade kind of drew himself as birth. So perhaps the shade sees himself, he perhaps had a life before now, and this is his life now, below, perhaps in the abyss, and he was reborn as part of this tree, and that's just part of the cycle. It's hard to understand what I'm saying here unless you're familiar with the game, perhaps. These are thoughts that I definitely want to have recorded that you can revisit, and if you've known the game, if you've seen the game, start to put these pieces together. But let's go ahead and finish. Right? There's no others. Oh, there is one other. The fugitive. We saw an image of pain before. That kind of looks like what was in the background there. And then you have an image of not the shade, but darkness. You know, the fugitive sort of escaping this place of pain. But this is towards one of the endings, leaving the caves. That's one of the intended objectives that the developer had. You know, 3 ways of playing the game. The Fair. Interesting. And the Hermit. I think I'm going to revisit most of these again later. I'm going to wrap up now. Stay or leave. Night versus day. And time. 1, with the shade being at the top of the hourglass. 2, the shade being absorbed by the time. And 3, where the shade has left. The time escaping the hourglass at that point. These are all the pictures that we can draw. I think I missed one there. Missed a couple of them, actually. Wonder, here it is. The call, the palm. Again, the curtains framing some sort of moon here. Right. I'll leave you to your own thoughts about some of these and what it all means. But that's going to do it for us for now. If you notice, if you look at the time, it's moving faster. Every 2 or 3 seconds, 2 seconds instead will pass. So we're going to hang out here, and tomorrow, more than a day will have passed. Actually, let's sit in the chair. Seems fitting.